Welcome to episode 45 of Reverse the Relapse. And today I have a very special guest for you, Amanda Clark, who is an award-winning Advanced Accredited Practising Dietitian with over 20 years working in bariatric surgery. Amanda has developed a system for more easily serving and eating the right amount of foods after bariatric surgery, which we'll hear about in today's episode. Amanda runs Great Ideas in Nutrition, which is a private practice located near the Gold Coast here in Australia, offering in-person and telehealth consults for weight and gut-related problems. So I can't wait to share this great discussion that I had with Amanda with you in this week's episode. You're in the right place if you're ready to stop the sabotage and weight regain post-weight loss surgery and start losing again. Hi, I'm Georgie Beams. I'm a psychologist who works in the area of emotional eating, sabotage, and weight regain for weight loss surgery patients. I work both in a weight loss surgery clinic as well as supporting women online to reverse the relapse. I honestly believe that psychology should be a mandatory part of everyone's weight loss surgery journey. Your body has had an upgrade to version 2.0 after surgery, but your mind has been operating at version 1.0. You're here to update your mind to match your body and get back on your weight loss path. And I'm here to help you. So welcome, Amanda, to the podcast. I'm so excited to be talking to you today.
I'm really excited to be here. Thanks, Georgie.
You're welcome. So maybe I'll just start with how we connected. So I have been working in a weight loss surgery clinic here in Melbourne since 2016, and we have your bowls in the clinic. So I have actually been talking about the bowls with patients, and then you came across one of my trainings and reached out, and we connected, and then we had a call, and I realised they're your bowls, which is very exciting.
Yeah, I absolutely love what you do, and I'm also just thrilled that that people kind of around the world see value in what I do. It's wonderful, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So maybe we start with hearing a little bit about you and your background, and particularly how and why you got involved in the area of weight loss surgery.
Sure. Well, I've actually been practicing for over 30 years now, and about 20 years ago, a bariatric surgeon came to town on the Gold Coast, and he was looking for somebody to work with, and I already had an interest and a lot of experience in weight management generally. So I was very interested to get involved because really it was kind of my clients who were going to be interested in bariatric surgery. And so being a new area, I wanted to make sure that it was done right and that, you know, those clients were well looked after through that process. You know, at that time, it was kind of a controversial area, I guess, and even a lot of dietitians weren't so sure this was the best thing to do. But I actually think I'm better off to be there and try and push it in the right direction and make sure things are okay, rather than, you know, stand on the other side of the line and say, "Oh, I don't know enough about this to be approving."
I totally agree, but I think it's about how can we help them wherever they're at on their journey. Where do they need the most support, and how can we do our best as a professional to support them in terms of meeting their goals?
Absolutely, and I'm so pleased that it kind of has gone down the path. I think all the dietitians who have been involved, or the psychologists who have been involved, have really shaped the direction of bariatric surgery, and it is sitting in a place that I'm very happy to be involved in.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So maybe if you wanted to share with us, Amanda, you have developed a set of tools that supports people after surgery. So can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, I guess that's come from working with people over all these years. I figured out very early that when you just talk to people, certainly the more you make it relevant to them, the more they understand, but it's still words and those words disappear. And so I think the research suggests that when we tell people something, they remember 10% of what we told them. That if we write it down, so if we give you a handout, then you might retain 20%. But that if we can actually show people what we mean and give them a tool to help them actually do it, then you can achieve 80% understanding and retention of that information. So I guess it started for me taking photos of my meals and being able to bring that up on the screen with clients and just see the understanding, that's what you meant.
It takes it from that theoretical perspective and makes it more real, doesn't it?
Exactly. I've got one thought bubble above my head that I'm explaining, and they've got a completely different thought bubble picture above their head as to what they're interpreting. So this kind of was the go-between that really said, this is what I mean. This is how much I'm talking about. And from there, I could see that, people could really understand, and they then wanted me to print out my pictures. And so that was when I could see the value in actually making a picture book that really showed you, no matter what you're eating, what was that quantity, or, what's the thought bubble in my head, so that you can get it far more easily.
Yeah, I think that makes absolute sense. And I think it's a tool that a lot of weight loss surgery patients would particularly appreciate as well. So talk to us about, a little bit more detail, in terms of recommendations and some of the conversations that you have around this area with your patients.
Sure. Well, the main problems I see down the track with bariatric surgery is grazing or eating larger portions than the stomach pouch was designed for. And so I've taken the concept from that visual kind of plan, and that visual plan is based on 3 meals and 3 snacks, so that we're getting good provision of nutrients and maximizing the intake of nutrients, because there's evidence that as you go below 800 calories, you don't lose any more weight by eating 600 versus 800. So we want to get at that at least 800 calorie mark and not go below that. So 3 meals, 3 snacks, and then I've kind of divided it into meals being 200 to 250 calories and snacks being 100 calories. So the concept kind of works around that. So the pictorial book shows you that and shows you what that portion size is, whether you're having cereal for breakfast or eggs and mushrooms or something like that, all the different snack options, ideas for lunch. What if you're out and you want to buy sushi? How much is the right amount to buy? All of those sorts of things, just to make it really simple and easily understood, and a real system.
Yeah, and I think just having that structure and the system makes all the difference as well. Now, I'm sure some listeners will be sitting here and thinking, okay, so what happens if I don't actually eat breakfast? And now what happens? That all sounds good in theory, but what happens if I'm actually not physically hungry, at one of those meals?
Yeah, great point. And, in certainly that first year after surgery, there isn't a lot of appetite for a lot of people. So often it is a case of eating despite your appetite. But what we're doing there is we're developing the habits and the routine so that you can be on autopilot and you've got this pattern of eating for when those hormones from the surgery, that you get an increase in a lot of the appetite hormones, they start to wear off from about 1 year post-surgery. So we've really had that first year to develop the pattern that's going to carry us through the following 7 years, which is when we start to see weight regain.
Yeah, really interesting and a really good point. So I'm a big fan of using tools because we know it's all about tools, isn't it?
Mm.
To support
All
on this
sorts of
journey.
tools.
All sorts of tools, exactly. And one of them in particular is the hunger fullness scale. And
Mm.
that question comes up a lot in terms of what does this mean after surgery with the
Mm.
hormones? And how do I
Yeah.
use this tool now?
Exactly. So in that first year, it can be difficult. And so the way I use the portion control tools is I say, okay, if we're trying to develop this routine, uh, this is what your pouch is designed to take in. This is what will give you the best nutritional intake. Let's see how that shows up in terms of satisfaction or fullness, because as you know, we never really want fullness. Fullness means you've gone too far, you've overstretched your stomach, and that's usually pretty clear soon after bariatric surgery.
Mm.
The satisfaction is sometimes something people haven't been very familiar with because they've, for whatever reason, eaten more than they needed multiple times, or they just don't get that satisfaction signal. They don't recognize it, or it's been overridden for other reasons because the food tastes good or because they're actually stressed and they're eating for other reasons other than appetite. So I find the portion control is actually a good way to help people to recognize, okay, this is meant to be satisfaction. How does this feel? How will I recognize this in the future?
Yeah, yeah, that makes great sense. Thank you for clarifying because that one just comes up a lot, and obviously depends as well where people are at in their journey, the first year versus beyond, etc. I would
Yeah,
love
and
to hear. Oh, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say that I think that everybody's got different reasons for their weight rising in the first place. And so for some of them, it's irrelevant to appetite. And for some people, their appetite signals are maladapted or faulty in some way. And there's a variety of possibilities as to what can cause that. So sometimes the approach and what I might tell one client might be different from another, just based on what led them here in the first place.
And that's a really interesting point around the maladaptive. Can you maybe explain a little bit more about that?
Well, for some people, they've perhaps relied on the feeling of fullness to make them feel okay. Um, but fullness is not what we're looking for, but they feel very uncomfortable with satisfied and don't recognize satisfied. So I guess it's a matter of really looking at what the history of that person is as to how easy it's going to be to move into listening to their appetite. But the goal certainly is for long term, after we get past this year one of focusing on getting the routine happening and identifying what the problems are and trying to work on those problems in year one, we do really start to fall back on appetite sensation, kind of in the long run, because people aren't going to keep monitoring everything. But the more kind of automatic monitoring there is in your environment, the more that influences the messages that you get about how much you're going to eat.
Interesting. And to input on my side as the psych side
Yeah.
is that I also help patients clear any fears that they may have around being hungry or fears around just not having that really full sensation, if that's what is safe and
Yes.
comfortable for them. So yeah, that's great that we're having this conversation because, I see that happening as well. And from my side, then there's processes that I use to clear that as well. So it's safe. It's okay for them to be in touch with their hunger signals.
Yes. Okay. I'm so glad you brought that up because, yes, that's a very common thing that people, when they experience hunger, they want to make it go away.
Yes. Yes.
And so for you, I guess you're helping them to sit with it and, yeah, not be afraid, not have it be something that has to go away, because, in this day and age, there's a whole lot of people who never feel hungry just because we eat more often than hunger would come in, or we eat too great a quantity, that it's just not even something that some people experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I find with the grazers that you mentioned as well. It's just, I find that there can be a theme of just constantly topping up because of the fear driving it as well, because I don't want to feel, so for many clients, that feeling hungry it's very triggering. So it's very uncomfortable. So just topping up feels a lot more comfortable and safe.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. Thanks,
Yeah.
Georgie.
So tell us a little bit more about the plates, the bariatric bowls, and how people can get the most out of it, and how it can really help support them as another tool.
Yeah. So, a lot of us don't realize the little conversations that our brain have without us even being aware about how much is appropriate to eat. So advertising really pushes us to expect that it's quite okay and normal to buy a block of chocolate every time you go into the service station, or to eat from larger packs, etc. So that the plate and bowl really fit in with that visual concept. So there you see in the picture the amount of cereal that'll give you that right sort of quantity for balancing those calories out through the day. And you've actually got the bowl, and the bowl has cup measures on the inside. So I've looked at every cereal. Some of them are more dense than others, and identified the quantity of each type of cereal that would be about that right amount for breakfast, for example. So I've designed the bowl in a way so that even a quarter of a cup of muesli does cover the bottom. Whereas if you're using a beautiful broad-based bowl, a quarter of a cup of muesli is just a sprinkle on the bottom. And so without you even realizing it, you will pour more into that bowl. So what I'm trying to do is get the environment supporting what you're trying to do, so that it looks like the right amount, what you're aiming for. So with the the bariatric plate, for example, which you might use for your evening meals, it's designed to hold 1 cup when you just fill the kind of flat part of the plate, about 2 centimeters deep, 3/4 of an inch deep in the middle. And from a nutritional perspective, I've encouraged that be half filled with protein and half filled with low starch vegetables. So things like broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, beans, zucchini, cabbage. Or if you're going to include a bit of carbohydrate, to just make it a tiny little part of that vegetable component. So that would be rice or pasta or potato, sweet potato, pumpkin. It just gets the right kind of calorie balance, particularly when you're aiming to lose weight. Once we get beyond year 1, or once you reach your goal weight, that balance can change a little. So yeah, it's about the tools that you're using supporting the plan that you're trying to follow.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense, because we have seen the changes in the sizes of our plates and bowls over the years. And a lot of people just fill their plate according to the size, and can do that in often a mindless way. We can underestimate a lot of what we're eating. So I know there's some interesting research behind that. So it just makes so much sense to have something that is just so structured, and something that you don't really have to think through. It's all there in terms of the bowls and the sections and everything, that makes it nice and easy and simple for people, as well as they make the necessary adjustments to life after surgery.
Exactly. If we can put a plate in our pantry, that means that we will serve less without having to think about it. And once we've got less on our plate, the likelihood is we'll be satisfied by it, particularly if we've had bariatric surgery. Then It does. It takes away some of that decision fatigue of how much should I be having of this. Yeah, I think it's
Exactly. I think the
very
more we
valuable.
can keep things simple and easy and then that's how we create good habits too, right? Isn't it? So we use the bowls. That can be a great habit to have in place to support weight loss surgery goals.
Exactly. So I've kind of I keep working on the system. So I developed the bariatric plate back in about 2010 maybe, and developed the orange book, which I call it, which is Portion Perfection for Bariatrics. But since then, I've seen, well, what about meals on the go? So we've created like a Barry Prepper lunchbox. We've created a snack container, which is really useful. And the next thing to come out is the lunch bag, which will carry those tools easily for you so that you can just pack up your lunch and your snacks if you're heading out for the day. And you've got everything you need in that one pack.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I love that. And we'll talk shortly about where to find that for our listeners. So what I'd love to do now, Amanda, I asked my community, what questions do you have? So I'm actually going to cover off some of these questions now.
Okay.
So the first one is, how do you get in enough vitamins and minerals with smaller portions when you can't properly absorb them through your GI system anymore?
Right. So I think what's being referred to there is the fact that stomach acid, which is greatly reduced after bariatric surgery, is actually quite important for the solubilization and absorption of various nutrients. So that's actually why there's particular forms of vitamins in the vitamin that you take, in the bariatric vitamin. That's why a bariatric vitamin is better than just a general multivitamin, because it's got different doses of some nutrients that are particularly impacted, like vitamin B12, and it's got different forms of some nutrients that don't require stomach acid, like the fact that we use calcium citrate instead of calcium carbonate, because calcium carbonate requires stomach acid, calcium citrate does not, for example. So that's why I'd recommend sticking with a bariatric multivitamin. And then from the food perspective, the vitamins backing us up, but when we look at the total nutritional intake, if you're making good choices at those 3 meals and 3 snacks, it can be achieved with the bariatric multivitamin and perhaps a separate calcium supplement commonly.
Great. Excellent. How do these work in terms of the bariatric bowls and plates when you have a mixed meal, such as a casserole?
Yeah, great question. So when you look at the bariatric plate, it's half protein, half low starch vegetables, or that little bit of carbohydrate. So when you make a casserole, the idea is you make it in that proportion so that what you put into the casserole is half protein and half low starch vegetables. And the only thing I'd say about that is with the balance of that low starch vegetables, leave out any leafy vegetables in that calculation. Still put them in the casserole, but they kind of disintegrate into nothing. And what we want is that the final kind of makeup of the casserole is half protein, half low starch vegetables. So once you do that, same sized pile of chicken to the pile of carrots and beans and broccoli, then it'll come out in the right proportion. So you just serve it over the whole of your plate, just filling the base 2 centimeters deep on the bariatric plate.
Makes sense. Good for winter.
Yeah, also applies to stir fries or, anything where you want to mix it up. If you want to make a beef salad or something, you want to do it in that same way as well. Make sure that half the volume is your protein, half the volume is the salad.
Yes, fantastic. Next question, how can a standard plate be for everyone when clearly we all have we're all different and we have varying appetites?
Yeah, good question. So I also do a portion perfection set for people who have not had surgery. And what you'll see there is 4 different kind of portion sizes for different calorie amounts. When it comes to bariatric surgery, everyone's been given this tool which will enable them to feel satisfied on 1 cup of food. So that's where we keep it until we've gone too far or we've reached where we want to be. And then we've got options for increasing the calorie intake. But, if you put someone who hasn't had bariatric surgery onto the bariatric plan and they're only eating a cupful of food, the chances are they're going to faint. But that doesn't happen with bariatric surgery. So it's just such a valuable tool to use this small portion for as long as we can or as long as we need to. So I encourage people to not go beyond 1 cup of food whilst they want that tool working for them. Because once you go beyond that, it's more difficult to come back down to 1 cup.
I think that's a great point. And I've got a few clients over 1 year post-op who are still hungry after 1 cup. So, I check in, is it head hunger? Is it tummy hunger? And they say, no, it's definitely tummy hunger. So they're saying to me that they feel like they need more than 1 cup, that they're not satisfied.
Yes. So that's from going beyond 1 cup. So typically, well, it is true, the further we go beyond surgery, the more that ghrelin hormone has the potential to come back. And remembering that everybody's got different reasons as to why their weight became high in the first place. For some people, they may have a particular sensitivity to ghrelin, or their body just might produce more of it, or a more potent version or something. But typically, the reason why 1 cup is not satisfying is that the stomach has been stretched beyond 1 cup. And once you stretch it beyond 1 cup, the part of the mechanism of satisfaction comes from the tension in your stomach wall. And you've got the vagus nerve, which goes between your stomach and your brain. And when it senses that tension in your stomach wall, it sends the message to your brain to say that you're satisfied. Now, I wouldn't discount the possibility that some people's vagus nerve message is not so great, and that's what helped them reach a high weight in the first place. But if we just assume that it's working okay, if you imagine that your stomach, being a stretchy membrane, is a bit like a balloon. When you take a fresh balloon, you kind of blow into it and it does a little puff up, and then there's resistance, and you have to take another breath and blow harder to make it expand further, but you can do it. And the more times you do it, the easier it is to expand to that higher level. And once you've expanded it to quite a high level, once it comes back down, it's all puckered and it never goes back to that same level of elasticity. So that's a little bit similar to what we're talking about here, that if you've overeaten if you've eaten beyond 1 cup for whatever reason, it tasted really good, or you were eating for reasons other than appetite, then you start to do that stretching. And so that satisfaction mechanism is not as good anymore. You still potentially have the ability to bring it back down, maybe not all the way back down to 1 cup, but when you reduce your food intake, after about 5 days or so, your brain's reaction, its panic reaction to you haven't had enough, go and find more, starts to settle down. And that's where, even without bariatric surgery, people will say, my stomach's starting to shrink. Their stomach probably isn't shrinking, but their reaction to the level of tension that their stomach is used to is settling down and being comfortable on a lower level of tension. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. So, advice for anyone who is eating more than a cup?
Yeah. So, number one, see what happens if you reduce to 1 cup. And if after 5 days this is not working, certainly adding more vegetables or salad will enable you to increase the volume without significantly increasing the calories. And worst case scenario, the non-bariatric version of my book only adds up to 1,300 calories, whereas the bariatric version is between 900 and 1,100 calories. Theoretically, we should still be able to lose weight on 1,300 calories, and that actually gives you a 3-cup volume meal. So we can move on to that.
Great. That's really helpful. Thank you. And final question, Amanda, where can we buy them? So where can we buy the bowls, the orange book? Where can we find you?
Okay, great. Well, our website in Australia is greatideas.net.au, so you can find all the products there. Outside of Australia, Amazon.com, we have a Portion Perfection store there. And if people just want to kind of follow along with us, we've got the Portion Perfection Facebook page, and there's also a closed group called Bariatric Surgery Eating. So you can find us on Facebook.
Fantastic. So what I might do is just put some links on my page where we have the podcast as well, just to make that easier for everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any final comments before we wrap up today?
No, I think really the combination of what you do and what I do, like I completely recognize that just getting the portion size right doesn't solve all the other issues. There are other reasons why you might be driven beyond the portion size. But the portion size and the nutritional input are very important, which is why it's really good to have a system where you don't have to think about it. You don't have to look it up all the time, but you kind of learn what's going on so that you can then focus on the thinking side of things and help to clear some of those blocks that hold you back.
Yeah, and I loved what you mentioned before about it's many tools, isn't it? And not just relying on that one tool of surgery. It's about finding, having many tools in your toolkit, including what we've talked about today, psychology, exercise, whatever that is, there's all different tools to really help set people up for success in the longer term.
Absolutely. And, you just choose which one of those tools you draw on at any point in time. Yeah. Thanks so much for your contribution.
Thank you. And I really enjoyed talking to you today. And I know the listeners will enjoy listening to this session and receive a lot of value. So really appreciate your time today, Amanda.
Most welcome.
Thank you.
If you loved the content in this podcast, you have to come and check out my one-on-one coaching program. We work together for 3 months to get you back in control and change your relationship with food for good. Now, I only have limited places available every month. So go to my website and click Work With Me. That's www.georgiebeams.com. See you over there.